All right, everybody, welcome back to Jelly Jam, round 2 of 2 for today. This is the final round of the entire event, so feel free to be confidently ready. Looks like we're set with our runners to go ahead and start up the final event of our showing. This round features the runners team on the left, Mike and Mrs. Mike versus Voodoofs and Mini Lily. And just because this is the runners up round does not make this any less of an exciting race. I'm going to give a countdown, and I'll have Real Critical joining me in commentary for the final round, and you'll be seeing a couple of things that you might not recognize this time compared to the previous runs, but do know that we've got a lot of guys struggle going on screen, so we're going to see everything across all 4 runners be theoretically the same. Of course, it is going to vary based on it being a roguelike and all. So anyway, I'll give a 5 count, and the racers can go ahead and prepare. So we'll get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
From voice, and just as a very brief personal note, who's still here, Altair? Just saying. That being said, you can immediately see that 2 of our runners, at the very least, Mike and Mini Lily here, have a couple of changed sprites. Those are of Eve. Thank you very much for doing that. And of course, you will see a double Guys Struggle match. So the last match we've had was between Guys Struggle and the Vanilla game, that's what it's called. And now we actually have both teams running here with the Guys Struggle mod. So yeah, it should be interesting, hopefully.
To recap for those who are coming here and were not here either last week to see the one team run Guys Struggle or the first round today, which featured Guys Struggle. Guys Struggle is a mod that was made by our very own Real Critical, and the character display uniquenesses that you see between Mike and Lily's screen, those were made by Eve. They have nothing to do with the ROM patch itself. Guys Struggle itself features a few changes from the original game. It's got a variety of enemies added into the screen, and it has a little bit of a difference in terms of the chest and contents loadout. It has an additional series of floors that our racers will have to run through, and it has a floor 50 that's a little different than what you might be familiar with if you played this game as a kid.
Yeah, I owe at least one viewer from the last round an explanation of what a particular sprite on the 100 floors does. So maybe we're gonna see that side quest this time. I don't know. We can maybe kind of sort of spoil it this time. I don't know. Maybe we'll get to it when the time comes.
And part of the fun with this is not having to share too much about what you're seeing on screen and what you're going to be seeing. Speaking of stuff that you're seeing on screen, there is one other little twist that you might notice on everybody's screen as things go. The normal floor loadout that will tell you when you enter a new floor normally says Ancient Cave Floor 7. That banner has been reduced to only show the floor number, which helps simply because enemies can spawn behind the banner, and it's nice to not have to worry about enemies existing where you can't see, so it lets you play a little faster.
Yep. I really do like that mod. While I was developing this, I was like, yeah, this is the quality of life that I want for this game. So both teams here have been competing versus the 2 teams you saw just now in finals round, and here they are meeting up again. This is the race for 3rd place, but nevertheless, both of these teams here are very skilled, and I will say last round's matches were really close, both of them actually. So yeah, and the finals just now was as well, right? So yeah, there is definitely yet another hopefully very interesting match to be seen here.
We already see a bunch of points marked off for our runners. Mini Lily just earned a point. I'm sorry, Mrs. Mike just earned a point by opening 6 chests in a party room that contains 6 through 8 chests, which is a good start for her. It's one of the first objectives that we've seen our teams actually earn. Some other variances that you'll see And if you type exclamation point scores in the chat, you'll be able to understand why our points are the way they are. A lot of the points on our teams can be traced to things being already sort of earned without having been broken. For instance, our teams have the responsibility of not equipping anything that they discover from a blue chest. They arguably have that point until they lose it, so that's a free point that was marked for our racers. Another to have it so that
marked for only the blue team just yet. So.
Yes, the runners have the choice to mark that point immediately or to apply it once they find, say, a blue chest and choose not to equip it. That way they have the option to decline it. Another point incentive is to have it so that way, say, if you're running the guys struggle mod that you bring Salon, that is by default something that are... Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the guys. That's a different challenge. Oops,
yeah,
what do I know?
Vanilla reward. Not important anymore.
There is a little text on the bottom right corner of each racer's screen that says two elements, either thunder and water or fire and ice. This is because there's a point incentive to have each runner on each team claim 2 of the 4 primary elements and use them as a means of damage for casting spells only. They don't have to worry about it if an IP ability breaks the rule there or if they find another means of dealing damage with that particular element. So you're going to see a lot of thunder and water from the top half of the screen, ideally. A lot of fire and ice from the lower half of your screen, and hopefully, since everyone has already zap and fry for some other damage output, which everybody has access
and notably, Lily just found Ice Walk, which is right in her elements, and I believe that Voodoo's found Zap. So yeah, that is a great start in terms of spells. It's always good to have a little bit of an option to, you know, kill early enemies quickly. As long as you want to spend that much MP, but of course it's a very good jelly spell as well.
Mike almost immediately finds another 6 chest plus room. So pretty sure he's going to take it now that he has the opportunity to do so. He's going to have to blow through some MP in order to do it quickly, since he's got both Thunder and Dragon, coincidentally, the most powerful spells available to him. But they'll be able to clear out the enemies in here very easily, versus if he finds a room like this later on, and it's just too dangerous for him to do so. Mrs. Mike finds a Sky Sword, the most powerful weapon that you can find in the cave, other than the Myth Blade, which appears much, much later and is in a red chest. The Sky Sword being in a blue chest is effectively forbidden, but it can be fed to your capsule monsters as a means of pet food, and blue chest items tend to be very good in terms of making your pet happy. So arguably the Sky Sword will be saved for later, better off, but the temptation to equip something by hitting optimal is there, and it can auto-equip itself to Maxim and also Decker. So our runners are probably going to be feeding their blue chest items immediately, if not as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a strat that's been universally done by runners so far across all teams, if I'm not mistaken. But that point could technically be forfeited, but I don't think anyone did that so far.
It's such a time save to be able to hit the optimal button in your menu to just turbo equip your characters with whatever the strongest option is. So the potential of saving all that time going up and down your equipment list looking for different choices to put on instead of a Sky Sword it's a huge time save.
Yeah. I mean, and you probably want to feed your capsule monster as well. So especially in this ROM hack, we've seen it before. If you've seen the last race, we do have 120 floors to go through. That's 20 more floors where you're actually going to benefit from a capsule, even if it's not going to be too helpful at the jelly. So yeah, players do have to, if they want to have that point incentive, or if they want to keep that 1 point, they do have to evolve their capsules in parallel, aka they will have to have the same form and a different capsule. Which is a bit of a constraint. We've seen that, especially when players died, right? Then the other player has to... There's a gold shield. The other player has to tone down their capsule form to form 1 again, because then the other player will have form 1. So, yeah.
While we're talking about just the restriction of capsule monsters being tied together at the hip for what form they are, we find a few things that each particular player is going to want to find. Mike discovered Valor. Mrs. Mike discovered Rally a moment ago. Those are very effective spells in terms of just longevity for your run. Valor, great for dealing damage, although quite costly to undead enemies and being a full revive. Rally being the cheaper revive option, but only healing for 100 health. It doesn't scale well at higher levels, and early on it can be a little bit of a sink of MP since it can't AoE heal very well, since it heals based on the amount of targets that you do heal. Voodoo finds a 6 chest room and clears it expertly right here with this regain. He also discovered a high power ring, which is one of the few rings in the game that gives you the access to, gives you access to the trick spell. Hot power ring and high power ring and trick ring all give you that. What's interesting about those is it allows characters like Guy, Decker, or even your mages that don't have trick to be able to cast trick. So for cost of IP, it's a little bit less efficient, but it is an interesting find. It might come and play later during the jelly bite, but you're probably not going to see a lot out of it in between here and there.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing to note that you guys can ask any and all questions about what you're seeing here. So if you guys are puzzled about what we're saying, what this is, even though we're going to explain about the game, about the mechanics and whatever as much as you want, it's a little bit weird to just, explain it into the air in round 2 of the tournament. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask at any time. We're happy to explain it. Also, I want to point out that the Discord link and wait, I'm just going to put it up in there. The AC Discord command should be fixed now. So, yeah, that's working now. Perfect. Thanks, Eli. So, yeah, if you guys wanted to storm our community for the last week and earlier today and you just couldn't, then you should be able to. So, yeah, if you want to have any cave information, this and that, maybe start speedrunning, feel free to find us there, have your questions answered. Just hang out.
We luckily discovered a red core on Mike's screen that decided to stay, and Mrs. Mike is dancing with some cores right now too. She manages to keep one, and one core is a wonderful start to any Ancient Cave speedrun, whether it be a marathon or just a generic run. Mike collects another red core, 2 more red cores, and it's really a big deal to have all this EXP. You can hunt for some safety EXP by killing some safe enemies with low level equipment like eagles or buffalo or a handful of other things. You have to kill dozens of them to get the EXP that one red core provides.
Yeah.
They don't come with drops, so you're not getting any great loot out of them, but the EXP is just massive. Nice double apron on Lillian.
That happened last week as well for Triarchtox and Colliers with a smoke ball they found at the same time, as always rare said. I was going to say the opposite of the core logic you explained is also true. So when you don't get a red core, your run really becomes a bit of a pain. And it's always a bit of a downer, to have to play through such a run. So in a tournament like this, where you can't really just hit the reset button, it's so much worse if you don't get any cores. So that's always great.
Mrs. Mike curiously equips the Sky Sword intentionally to Decker. That does end up sacrificing a point for their team.
Are you sure it's intentionally? I mean, you probably saw her menu.
Yeah, I watched her scrolling through her menu and very carefully looked through a few other options before equipping it.
That's fair. So I personally think it's a very valid option to forfeit that point. Especially, I mean, I definitely do not mean to, shade Mrs. Mike's skill here. Which is definitely on a very high level, as we've seen in previous tournaments as well. However, it's probably safe to say that Mike is the more experienced player. And speaking in general, having the less experienced player forfeit that point and having the more experienced player let go of the blue chest items entirely is probably a valid strat. So.
There are a handful of blue chest items that really do matter a lot more than others, and Sky Sword, especially early on, is one of them. Sky Sword gives defense, and a pretty hefty chunk of it to boot, so you're taking about 25 less damage per melee hit when you equip a Sky Sword, and in these early levels, especially when you're fighting with enemies that Real Critics is so kindly patched into the game that you're not super familiar with, it can be nice to have a little bit of bulk in your back pocket, just to feel a bit safer. given the fact that encountering something new might be dangerous, might not be. And also, the Sky Sword itself has such a massive attack, it could make clearing out some battles a little safer. So maybe the incentive of equipping the Sky Sword to a player who's not quite as comfortable giving up at that point will allow her to get further and earn some other points.
Yeah, and of course, it now doesn't only apply to the Sky Sword, but now you get to equip any and all blue chest items you will still find. You know, if now you pick up a bolt sheet or a water grounds or something like that later on, maybe more blue chest weapons, you're gonna be very happy that you sacrificed that point early on because,
Yeah, the agility boosting accessories and equipment, Dragon Spear, Aqua Helm, Water Gaunt, those are appreciated by both Artie and Salon, especially because Salon is just very slow until hitting the mid-30s in terms of level. So being able to catch her up turns her from a liability into at least someone that can kind of keep up with the rest of your team.
Yep. And for, tourney runs or bingos or what have you, basically more casual runs than any percent PB attempts, I'm personally liking Salon, just as a fun character. And part of that is because that character can equip a lot of blue chest items, more so than any other character, I believe.
Yeah, Salon has the largest equipment pool out of all the characters in the game.
Yeah. So, getting rid of the blue chest items for her is definitely a big nerf. So, yeah. If you do pick that character, and again, Miss Mike didn't have to pick that character, but chose to, which does mean that, now opting to let that point go is definitely going to work out for her, I think. If you want to attempt these ROM hacks yourself, you can do so on the ROM patcher. It's linked in chat right now, and that you can get with the ! ROM patcher command. Assuming you do have a Lufia 2 ROM, that is. Of course, you can't use that for your speedrun attempts, but you very much can use that for tournaments like this. And of course, just to have some fun with the cave. In general, if you haven't played a cave, of course, I would recommend that as well. Maybe before you try one of the ROM hacks.
It's rare to find a compliment for the... it's rare to find a compliment to encourage people to play the DLC before playing the actual cave, but it is definitely worth playing the Ancient Cave before playing the Guys Struggle ROM hack. There are a few things in there that you may just need to refresh your memory on. There's a few unique items in here, so you may want to be comfortable devising strategies around a variety of gear, so that way when you see the handful of new things and the handful of removed options, that you've already got a few comfortable choices under your belt with how to deal with some particular challenging foes.
Yep. Although I will say, I said this before in chat as well, I think Guys Struggle is technically easier than the regular cave due to, some of the nerfed encounters. Of course, we do have the catfish, but yeah. There are exceptions to the rule. I guess part of the challenging thing is that, seasoned runners of the Ancient Cave don't necessarily know all these enemies, so it's always a bit of a, scary factor, as well as potentially running into an enemy that is more dangerous than you think and losing a run over it. So that is a bit of a danger. But yeah, I mean, in theory, it's easier.
Just noticed that we have Ice Valk being cast by our Christmas crew. I think that's a pretty fitting combination.
Yeah.
So all of our runners are kind of on pace with each other, which is reassuring. The late teens to early 20s give a variety of new challenges that you wouldn't necessarily see as you're playing the rest of this Guys Struggle mod. This is where new enemies really start to introduce themselves. We saw a couple so far in the brown hawk enemies, which look like eagles, but it's still a little more brown. We saw a crab enemy that we don't normally see. You see them pretty early in the main game, but not here in the Ancient Cave for one reason or another. Those have been added, and we've seen a couple of fights against those. We'll be seeing some more coming up, including what I think is a completely unique enemy sprite. You don't see it at all in the main game, nonetheless the Ancient Cave. Are there any enemies that our players need to be looking out for maybe something with a new drop or something that's exceedingly dangerous that they wouldn't otherwise normally avoid.
Yeah, so I guess it is in the patch notes, so I can spoil it now. There is an enemy called Unicorn, and we did actually, and by we I mean Eve, who developed this ROM hack along with me. So shout outs to her, not just for the sprites, but of course for working on Guys Struggle as well. But we put the Unijewel as a drop on unicorns, so that is probably something to look out for. The Unijewel is an item that cannot normally be obtained in the game. It has a 100% critical hit chance if you use the IP, and yeah, that is a very strong item to have. It's basically a very good jelly option. Other than that, I guess there is stuff like Eagle Rocks apparently have a higher drop chance from hawks than from eagles. So there is a couple of things. Of course, they should watch out when farming Cancer Rocks from Garbos, the anglerfish. And yeah, there is a rather unexpectedly tough side quest from a kid on floor 100. Thank you.
We have a couple other blue chest items on Mrs. Mike's screen. Curiously, she equipped the Sky Sword, but didn't equip the Camu Jewel nor the earring. I'm wondering if that's just something that was overlooked.
Did you remove that point from her tracker?
I did.
She? Okay, so is it possible that she's not aware that the Sky Sword is a blue chest item, if you know what I mean? Because she is feeding the Camu Jewel.
And the
I
earring.
think that's what must be happening. Yeah. That's unfortunate. That's quite unfortunate.
So the earring is nothing to write home about. It gives the IP of Thunder, and it can be used by one of the girls, either Tia or Salon. It's the only access that she would have to a Thunder magic spell, and that's via IP, which is a little difficult to use at times because it requires getting IP on a character who is not very good at earning and collecting and maintaining IP. That said... Oh, looks like she's thinking about that Sky Sword. Yeah, this was an interesting scenario.
Yeah.
Also, I think her screen may be struggling. Yeah, because she equipped it. Maybe she's looking at her score sheet and sees that it was taken off. But I did mark it off for her. The Camu Jewel is also alright. Oh, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to be clear to our viewers, the players are marking their scores themselves. But of course, you know, feel I can fine-tune if necessary. Just to make the points totals a bit more clear here to you as the viewers, because they're not always marked in time. So, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's the Camu Jewel and the earring both have some interesting uses. Ooh, Decker on Voodoo's screen taking a real beating, but he does survive. Camu Jewel gives a little bit of attack power, and its IP is a fire elemental attack that's okay. It's alright for these early floors as a means of fire elemental AoE. Especially when you don't have a lot of magic available. It can help in a pinch. You're not going to see too many times in which it really does play a major importance. Although at the jelly, it does help to have a little bit of extra IP. Trying to think of items as being good can be rather difficult. A lot of people know that agility boosting items are great, deadly weapons are wonderful. And a lot of people think a lot of value comes from certain spells or items or other contents that you discover along the way. Spells like Trick are largely useless until you make your way to the jelly on the final floor. And very rarely will you see people cast Trick outside of maybe one or two rare circumstances to hammer down some Hydoras or some other random safe enemy that has a drop that you might be interested in, which you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to very easily. Ideally, you have deadlies and you just kill them, or you have spells which deal just so much reliable damage from your faster spellcasters that you don't really buff up the attack of your slower units that could just not get a turn by the time the battle ends.
So for anyone who's not intimately familiar with how speedrunning this game feels, you very much have to collect a set of equipment for the jelly kill, which is your boss at the end of this whole thing. And you also have to get the kind of good equipment to make it through the cave, and the balancing of each is kind of the difficulty part. And yes, this is using a specific custom ROM. It's called Guys Struggle. It's available through the ROM patcher, which you can get on the !ROM patch command. It's a community patch that's been around since April last year. And yeah, it does add a couple of extra things. I'm going to type it out in chat.
So we're seeing our capsule monsters being fed here on both the right side players' screens. The reason that they're both being fed right now, probably more so than anything else, is because the way the point incentives work in this particular challenge is that the capsule monsters that each particular player has, if they're going to be deployed at a certain form, both players need that form out. So if somebody wants to run Sully 2, well, their partner needs to have Darby 2, or whatever the combination might be. Otherwise, well, you can't run it. So there's going to be some times in which you'll see racers feeding little bits here and there.
Oh, no. So on Mini Lily's screen, we just saw total defeat for Blue Mimics, but she was also on the stairs, which means she just stairs glitched, which does the following things. Her entire party is back to level 1. She loses any and all equipment, any capsule feeding progress, basically everything. But she's still alive. She's still at floor 32, you know, for all intents and purposes. It's quite hard to come back from this. So, yeah, until she finds a very good set of equipments here, she cannot really hope to fight a lot of enemies, because even cores are just going to slaughter her characters right now. Unless she finds red cores or something like that. And basically, it's not guaranteed that she'll survive. But it's also possible to come back from it. So, yep.
Yeah, ideally, she finds a simple spell like Spark
situation.
or Droplet, which any one of her casters can use. She gets lucky with a blue core, a single blue core that punches her capsule monster instead of her party members that want the EXP. And then she's able to skyrocket up to level 12 or 14. It's an interesting, very interesting situation that the game presents you.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting you in what you were saying, but I thought that was very much worth mentioning, because assuming she does survive, there's going to be a very interesting situation that is going to be with us for at least the next 10 minutes or so, if not longer. So, yeah, just hope that she does.
What's really interesting here, too, for is she could just end herself and catfish, excellent. She could end her run and just dive back to the beginning, but she's really in a weird situation where she has to think, do I stay in the running to try to make it so that way I can reach a certain floor? I try to, complete certain objectives if I can get lucky, or do I just dive back to floor 1 and restart from the beginning with the pool and ability to get certain items and then catch myself back up?
Yep. The thing is, there is always a chance that she's gonna get a total party KO anyway, so we'll see how that goes, but definitely best of luck to her, just like to all the other runners. Mike picked up a Rio Blade in the meantime. So, as we explained before, it's quite a powerful item, can be equipped by a lot of characters, and can be well used throughout the cave as well as for the jelly fight.
So it's effectively an uncursed Lucky Blade with a custom IP ability added to it, which gives it a high critical rate. Gee, it sure has a real critical rate, huh? Doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's very aptly named after one of the greatest people in our community, if not the greatest. Also a very modest person.
Yeah, Eve is pretty great.
Yeah, exactly.
Lily's in a very interesting situation. So we were talking about how she's in that zombie percent style, sort of revived as level 1, still somehow proceeding through. She is trying to... I can't tell if she's trying to get herself killed right now. She could just reset the game.
I think so too. Yep. This way always feels a bit more legit, I think, so it's probably her line of thinking as well. So yeah, that's unfortunately a death effectively 1 hour 30 minutes in. Well, I mean, it was a death 1 hour 30 minutes in. There's glitch happened a bit earlier, but still enough time to get down there, technically speaking.
Yeah, Eve is a qualified, very qualified participant of doing whatever she needs to do. If anyone's going to be able to catch themselves back up to deep stage, it will be Eve. Well, all of our runners here have proven themselves very capable. An hour and a half.
I think you mean the Lily, not Eve. You said
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Lily. Lily can do it.
Eve as well, of course, but
Eve could. Eve could. Lily could. People who aren't in this chat could. I'm sure it's very interesting to see just how things will turn out. Yeah. Lily can catch back up. An hour and a half isn't an absurd amount of time to try to speed through the ancient cave. They're playing Guys Struggle, which features a few things that add a bit of time and a few things that save a bit of time. So you don't have to spend quite as much time theoretically opening chests to look for stuff. Although you do have to consider the importance of opening chests and finding things to help keep you alive as, you know, pretty high up there. But the just main game itself, ideally you find your few good things, you speed through, you get a whole bunch of good jelly killing items technically for free at a cost of just a couple of minutes at the midpoint of the cave 450, and then you're done.
As long as you did practice that and you're willing to forfeit a point. But yeah, we'll definitely have to see. So the thing is, normally you do get about 1 minute per floor and some time left over that you can work with. Now Lily has 120 floors to deal with, or well, really all these runners, and only an hour and a half left if you start at 1.5 hours at floor 1. So that means you're just at about 45 seconds per floor, and there's no wiggle room beyond that, right? So for every floor that you take longer than 45 seconds, you're gonna have to take less than 45 seconds on another one. Yeah, it's not free, but it's possible. Whether it's feasible, I don't know. We'll see. I like those frog sprites. I'm very happy that they're in the game.
The King Frog sprite is a beautiful sprite. You don't normally see it in the Ancient Cave, and there's one tower that you see the King Frogs in. So you don't get to see it too much even in the main game, but they are just a happy boy. Or happy frog.
Make for a great Twitch emote. Yeah, quite great to see him at 2 screens at once here. It's really good. Definitely, I like seeing more of these regular enemies in cave as it is. I was gonna say earlier, as you described where the new enemies were added, so most of them are actually in the earlier parts of the cave, and the reason for that is because we didn't actually adjust any of the enemy stats, so we just put them in where they seem to be, you know, feasible for their level. Anglerfish apparently excluded. So yeah, we just put them in where they fit, and most of them are just really weak enemies because the Ancient Cave does have a couple enemies that aren't featured in the main game, and just has these overpowered enemies at the end of the cave. So the further you get into this cave, the more familiar it should feel.
Something neat that you'll see in the very, very late cave is that the additional bonus floors that were added in don't feature too much in terms of different enemies, mostly rehashes of notable enemies. We'll go over them as they come up, arguably. We have 4 runners who can bring them to our attention, so hopefully we'll be able to see them one way or another. Interesting situation for Mike. He is doing well. He's in a party room that doesn't have the chest combo that he needs, but he's already earned the point for chest discovery. There is a core in here. There's a blue chest in here. Oh, there's 2 cores in here. So he's arguably going to want to get the blue chest, if at the very least for capsule monster food. And especially because Mrs. Mike is still alive, they do both have a reasonable amount of capsule monster support, and they're going to want to capitalize on what they can. So that way they can both have, as reliably as possible, their capsule monsters dropping off some instant kill attacks. Mike's Sully's Form 2 has that available as a feature, and Mrs. Mike, I believe, has Form Darby, who is Form 3 instant kill availability. So those are 2 very powerful forms. They're not able to use them at the same time without kicking a point off. An engage ring. Perfect. But
it's always kind of good if you find bad items in blue chests, right? If you're gonna feed them anyway.
Well, Salon can equip the engage ring. It is technically hers. And the engage ring isn't
still a bad item.
It's fairly bad. It's not entirely useless. It does come with an IP ability, and the IP ability that it gives is Courage, which is a slightly larger than small defense boost to any and all targets, which is not a big deal at all.
Yeah, nothing to write home about. So
He does score some green cores, though.
Engage ring, yeah.
You'd think the engage ring would be important. It does have the cost of inventory, or sorry, just anything that you purchase from NPCs during the main game. It can be pretty useful, although it requires diving into the ancient cave to get, with a low % chance to even locate it. So it's pretty unlikely that you're going to discover it during your first playthrough of this game if you're just poking through and enjoying the fact that, oh, hey, look, there's a cool little cave in here.
With the exception of Lily, unfortunately, I think that fortunately all the other runners are making pretty much the same pace, which is always kind of good to see, you know. And we still do have to see 2 runners in this tournament get to Jelly. I mean, of the same team. That has not happened yet. On the contrary, it seems that it's quite hard to make it in Jelly in general in these tournaments lately. Do you think that might be because of the rule set, Eli?
Maybe, maybe not. There aren't too many objectives to have to worry about earning, and quite a few of the points to be completed require just kind of scoping out floors rather than proceeding through at a breakneck pace. So there's the point in which, you know, you gotta find a party room that has 6 or more chests and then open all of those chests. You got the incentive to not equip anything from a blue chest, and then quite a few of your other incentives require getting to the end. The most probably tedious ones include uncursing the same item and finding the same jewel for maximum to equip, which does encourage progressing through the game at a fairly even pace, so that way one of the people in your party, oh, nice Eagle Rock and Twist Jewel combo for Mike. So for example, the Eagle Rock and Twist Jewel that Mike has, those are 2 rocks that he found by defeating enemies. It is recommended for Mrs. Mike, although she has the ability to just equip one from a box, to hunt foes and try to collect one of those rocks as well. So hopefully she's able to discover those by proceeding through. So where previous Jelly Jams have sort of encouraged players to either go for the jelly or sit back and focus on completing bingo card style objectives, I think this event really does encourage players to all try to race for the end, going along the way to pick up whatever they can or complete whatever objectives they can, but with a little bit less urgency, since arguably most of these you should just be able to clear along the way.
Yep. I mean, I don't agree. I guess it might just be, you know, coincidence, since previous tournaments have featured a lot of deaths as well. We are talking about a roguelike after all, you know, it does, yeah, get some collateral damage along the way for everyone who does get a jelly kill. But yeah, I definitely would agree that it does encourage getting to the jelly and picking up maybe a thing here or there, as well as a lot of focus on the ROM hack specific puzzles, or, well, I guess the vanilla games objectives.
We see Mike fighting these Tartonas. Lily gets a core, which allows her to catch herself back up from the collateral damage of death. But Mike fighting these Tartonas is interesting. He is ahead of Mrs. Mike. Tartonas are not notable for giving an incredible amount of EXP or really anything. Really, their drops are not too impressive because they give an Earth Jewel, which is a small defense boosting rock that doesn't really have a great IP ability. That said, he may be hunting the Tartonas under the assumption that he'll find an Earth Jewel. That is one that, of course, drops from these guys, which are just a little bit after the Twist Jewels, which are more coveted. And also the Earth Jewel can be found in a blue chest. So since, there he manages to get one there.
Does get it.
It does give Mrs. Mike a little bit more. Yeah, he equips it now. It does give Mrs. Mike a bit more incentive to try to discover an Earth Jewel, because if each team has a Maxim equipped with the same jewel, then they earn a point. And since Mrs. Mike broke the blue chest box incentive, she has a little more availability to slap an Earth Jewel on. It drops at a fairly reliable rate. I say fairly reliable. It's 20% or so, kind of like all the other rocks.
It's very doable.
But it's doable, and it's not too difficult. She can kill them with fire elemental spells if she happens to discover Firebird, or a Red Saber, or a Burn Sword, which both Decker and Salon can also use. So her ability to get an Earth Jewel may prove more easy than getting a Twist. So it's creative play by Mike.
definitely. Here's how the logic works, just to spelled out. So the runner that's ahead can try to get that rock. If they do make it, then the second runner even attempts it. You know, if the first runner doesn't get it, then there is no need for the second runner to waste time on it. So that way, kind of balance it out, as well as kind of, you know, set a plan for your team. Yeah, good threat. I like the Earth Jewel as well, because Prince Lizards aren't very, you know, dangerous and all, but I also haven't seen any for Mike Mike. So, you know.
Mike did
There's the
discover a
450
twist
puzzle.
jewel
Oh,
out
he-
of a Bryn's Lizard. The scary thing about Bryn's Lizard, oh yeah, he did just run past it. That does earn him a point.
Just zooms by. Yep.
Doesn't even show it off. Gosh, how rude. So if you're
Yeah,
unfamiliar,
there's
the-
been some discussion about it before, you know, when he was doing commentary and then shading Pancras here for doing it in a weird way. So I think that's a bit of a cowardly way to get out of that one. But okay.
It's alright. He probably feels comfortable that he'll be able to discover what he needs to defeat the jelly along the way. Interesting anglerfish on Mrs. Mike's screen. That is one of the custom enemies that were brought into this mod. They are not a sprite enemy that you'll run into. They are sort of a cohort of the Garbos sprite that you see on screen. The blue crabs that you're probably familiar with if you're familiar with the ancient cave. The anglerfish itself is not super threatening, but they can call a friend, which is super threatening. So the incentive to fight one comes from if you can successfully and easily defeat them. In her case, if she were to have the Firebird spell, she could blow them apart. If she had a Red Saber or Burn Sword, she could do some significant damage. If she doesn't, she's taking a significantly higher risk of trying to defeat them ill-prepared.
And speaking of things that players need to kill the jelly later on, Voodoo just found the first second blade. So that is one of the items that could be found in the floor 50 puzzle that Mike skipped. Oh yeah, it's I think if movement there on Mike. If Voodoo's intended before to skip the points, I think he's even more going to be incentivized to do so now that he already has the deck blade. I think that's a very easy call to not do the puzzle. He's probably going to be happy about it, as every person has been before him that found the deck blade.
It was difficult to tell on the crabs sprites, but there is an ability to get a 50-50 on them, and is not how you would expect. Because they sort of zigzag their movement, one towards you and one in a random direction, they can sometimes be difficult to pin. It's almost impossible to get a back attack on them, which guarantees a surprise attack, so it's usually a 50-50 at best. She handled it well. She did get one in a doorway, and she's using Spark, which is the weakest damaging spell, but still fairly reliable and respectable damage on fire weak enemies. So she manages to clear out the bigger threat in this battle, strategically using minimal resources. So that's worth praise. It's interesting playing. She may have to do it one or two more times in this upcoming party room.
Yeah. Yep, that was a bit of an uphill battle because that was a back row anglerfish too. So took a couple more hits. The front row, back row thing is a thing that players new to this game, or even sometimes seasoned to this game, will not be aware of. But enemies, just like characters, have rows, and that does affect the damage they deal and take.
You see
Playing
some
a couple of cores
cores.
for Voodoos.
Yeah, Voodoos actually get some good cores. You'll see a lot of combinations of core battles as the run progresses, in which the different core combinations can appear in a variety on screen, and there's very often red cores, and you're very often going to have situations come up where the cores that you want to battle and defeat, the blue cores, the green cores, no cores, they run away and the red core stays around and gives you a paltry amount. They're great to skyrocket you from level 1 to level, say, 11, 12, 13. After that, their EXP becomes so negligible that you'd have to defeat several to gain a single level. And when one green core gives you a level for a very, very long time, getting a mere 2,000 EXP compared to the 33,000 EXP from a green core, you almost feel like a slap in the face.
Yep. And yeah, quite evidently, the Red cores and green cores are the most important ones to gain experience in the run. Blue cores are not as important because green cores drop just 10 feet after them. 10 floors after them. And no cores, by the time you have no cores, of course, you're going to take their experience, but they're not going to make or break your run most of the time.
Another neat thing about green cores, they come at a very, very opportune time. Right before ninjas appear, green cores become available. In fact, it is the 3 specific floors before ninjas that green cores exist. So if you're going to want to try to gain EXP, you're going to want to try to gain EXP off of the green cores, specifically so you have the ability to deal with the ninjas. Also, the Brinz lizards, which appear sort of in tandem with them. It can be a little spooky to deal with the Brinz lizards when hunting for a twist jewel, especially given Mike's scenario where he has one. That's probably why he went after the Earth jewel, because Tartonas appear in 2 separate enemy floor groupings, one here in the 50s and one in the late 40s. That gives Mrs. Mike a slightly greater chance at discovering Tartonas and also being able to defeat them, not having to worry about hunting for Brinz lizards on 2 ninja floors. And considering that they only exist on 3 floors, yeah, just giving Mrs. as much safety as he can to help make her job a little easier in terms of farming equipment and securing points is going to be always important.
Yep. There is quite a big floor difference between Mike and Mrs. Mike here, just to take those 2 as an example, because I just saw it. So there's Mike on floor 57 and Mrs. Mike on floor 38. So there's nothing wrong with going a little bit slower, just to, you know, take it a bit safer, take your, make sure you pick up everything you want on the fly, items, chests, whatever, enemy drops, I mean. But of course you gotta have to keep the total time in mind, and that could be cutting it a little bit close if you're keep going at the same time as you have been. So, not to address Mr. Mike correctly, directly, who's probably not listening to me right now. But yeah, in general, you do need to manage your time in these kind of tournaments, and all the more so if you're dealing with 120 floors.
Mike,
it should be noted.
There's so much EXP right here.
Yeah, I saw that. 6 digits of EXP.
That's interesting to see what's going on.
Not just barely either.
Yeah, he gets a ton. He gets over 130,000 EXP here, which just skyrockets his team into the 30s. This is the level that any percent runners are often at their highest when they're ending an any percent run, and he's there not even halfway through this run. This is fantastic for him. Mrs. Mike herself in a bit of a jam. She had a situation with assassins, which is a weird little tech situation that she could have used to get out of it, given how assassins and ninjas run at 2 steps per year, 1 step. She positioned herself incorrectly to start running away from them in reference to where a door was, and she made it into the door, but she went slowly. She went 1 step at a time, giving the assassins time to take both of their steps. If she had held the run button, she would have been able to outrun them just barely and not get caught in that door to get attacked. But she made it out fairly well. She took advantage of their holy elemental weakness, and she was able to recover out of it just fine. Mike just all the EXP for Mike. No sharing, only him.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, take a look at Mini Lily's room that she's in right now. It is not very inviting.
Mini Lily and Voodoo's are both in very interesting rooms right now. Lily's is arguably much worse, but
I think so too. There's just a lot of experience in Voodoo's room.
Yeah. Now he is in the 40s, so the Hydoras that we see here, they behave like the C Hydoras on floors 53 to 55, where they hit everybody in their standard attack. They are weak to the ice element, but they do not drop the coveted Hydora rock. Unfortunately, they do drop something. High potions, X potions, but whatever it is, it's not super important
high
compared
potions,
to everything else.
The thing here is, so Mini Lily has to deal with a lot of deadly armors, deadly swords, aka those enemies. She does have the ice element, you can see that on the lower right, so that's the element she signed up for to keep her points, she can only use fire and ice spells among the 4 elements. And would she have an ice attack spell, then she could get rid of those enemies fairly easily. But it's worth noting that there is absolutely no way you can influence what spells you get. It's just completely random. You cannot back it up from enemy drops or anything like that. There is no enemy drop that lets you cast anything ice elemental or anything like that. So, you know, elemental things to work with are just pure luck.
What a neat looking seahorse this was up there on Voodoo's screen.
Yeah, I think so too. That's a great sprite. Yeah, there is some very derpy looking seahorse sprites, and then there's those that look really good.
Mike's going for a Hydora Rock now. He did discover a Lizard Blow earlier. Him having a Real Blade and a Lizard Blow and a Hydora Rock would mean if he were to discover a Decker Blade, he'd be about as close to set as possible for a Jelly battle outside of having a Myth Blade for Maxim, because he skipped out on the chest rewards that would have given him the free Decker Blade and the Zerko Shield. He's going to have to explore just a little bit more. And the Hydora Rock is going to help. It gives agility, it gives attack power, it has a very mighty non-elemental triple striking attack, which can be used to really focus down some single targets or give Decker some AoE when he normally doesn't have any. So it's going to be interesting to see if he does pick up the Hydora Rock, what he'll actually do with it. Also of note, the Hydora sprites are weak to ice, and ice is, other than the Ice Falcon Blizzard spells, not something you have easy access to in the early floors. So where we saw on Voodoo's screen where he had all those Hydoras and cores in the map, you don't have much time to locate an ice elemental weapon. You do have access to a lot of fire elemental, a little thunder elemental stuff, but ice is just kind of difficult to get your hands on at that point.
Yeah, or good ice spells at the very least, or ice attack weapons. To answer a question in chat, there will not be another final with the 2 winning teams from today. So previously you saw the finals of Jelly Jam 2024. Now you're seeing the race for 3rd. And after this race, this will be it for Jelly Jam. Until probably next January or so, I would hope.
Next January.
January, I'm sorry. That's a good one. Yep. So unfortunately, this is the last Jelly Jam run. After this, it will be a long hiatus from Lufia streams, unless, of course, you know, people
historically in the past there has been a summer event that you may have seen called Fatal Blowout, which started before Jelly Jam did, and
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
There was not one hosted last year, unfortunately. I don't host the Fatal Blows, I host the Jelly Jams. So for Fatal Blowout, if we do happen to have one, it will likely happen in, I would assume, around July, maybe August. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, something like that. 2nd quarter, perhaps, yeah. What we did have last year was the Arena Challenge, which is kind of monthly challenge thing. And with a bit of luck, we're gonna have that this year as well. Yeah, all that is still future plans, you know.
We see some
of course,
interesting
if you do want to keep up to date, you can look at the AC Discord.
Yeah, we're always welcome to have and announce events here. Excellent use of the Dragon Rush, the Lizard Blow that Mike found. A lot of people think about it as being a great jelly killing weapon, but it does have some utility in being these. It has the highest attack power of weapons that come with an innate 3 times attack damaging option. He secures a Hydora Rock from this battle, and it was entirely optional, so it's pretty exciting that he does get his hands on it. Hydora Rock, normally in an Ancient Cave run, you would pair it with a very powerful weapon like the Sky Sword or some other blue chest weapon, or maybe a Zerko Sword or something, one of the more powerful options that don't normally have an IP ability that does increased damage. And in lieu of doing one single attack at 3 times the power, it does 3 attacks for roughly the same amount of IP. It can be boosted in power with Trick. It's overall just a very good utility-based rock to have. Over 1,000 damage on that no core. My goodness. From Maxim, of course. who is not a character you assume to see high damage from. He's been demonstrating a lot of effective value out of shuffling his equipment and utilizing the various IP abilities that come with them. Hydoras are weak to ice, and he does not have the ability to cast ice spells due to his selection of thunder and water only. So one thing he did was he shuffled the freeze sword around between Maxim and Salon, and he utilized their IP to take advantage of his AoE ice elemental IP attack. That does a ton of damage to Hydoras. It doesn't kill them, but it sets them up to be killed by other characters, which combined made a lot of the Hydora battles very easy, despite being ones that you would expect to see a little bit of a struggle out of. So good on him for using his IP abilities creatively, and that really is what defines a lot of the runners between pretty good or very good, very talented, is understanding that IP abilities with elemental advantages can really add safety and security to what it is you're doing, as well as add sustainability and longevity to your team by giving you access to, say, revives for Decker, who normally wouldn't be able to cast a revival spell, or an AoE heal from Guy, who normally doesn't have access to spells either.
Yep, it does fall in the big category of things you can learn in this game to get better at it, and most of those are not execution-based, but simply knowledge-based. First and foremost, probably being movement. But yeah, the more you know, the better it is for your runs.
A great thing about the Ancient Cave, whether it be the Guide Struggle mod or the base game itself, because of the way enemy interactions work, everything occurs in reaction to what you do. So you don't have to have a twitchy trigger finger and very dexterous input command ability. You just need to be able to learn and ascertain different weaknesses or advantages and understand that the tools you have might be better or more useful than you think they are. Of course, everyone is like super aware of maybe the elusive Decker Blade being valuable or whatever for Jellicoe, but there are other things out there that can help out with a variety of other circumstances. So you can take your time. You can run this with a game facts guide or maybe the Ancient Cave reference guide that Real Critical built, just to see a lot of handy tools and information that give you all the required bits of info that you need. So you can take your time with this, and you don't have to turn it into a speed run to make this Ancient Cave into a fun run. You may see a lot of roguelikes like Binding of Isaac or Hades. Those are action-paced, and they're fun, but it's a different kind of fun. Those prioritize being able to think quickly. This allows you to take your time, think slowly, relax. If you walk away to take a bathroom break, you don't have to worry about having to wait until a certain point in time in which to do it.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. I'm just going to add one more thing, which is that you can also play this game casually and get a lot of fun out of it if you just well, maybe clear the story mode, and then I'm talking about the Ancient Cave, right? So maybe clear the story mode ahead of time, and then just stream an Ancient Cave attempt or two, so you will know all the basic mechanics of the game, you know, and you will have people in chat that will help you along clearing this for the first time. That's how many people got their first jelly kills. Well, that's a very fortunate blue mimic encounter for Mini Lily this time. She only gets one blue mimic and 3 reds. That's something specific to Guy Struggle as well. I was actually going to mention that earlier, and saying that, you know, half an hour ago when I was talking about how Guy Struggle is so much easier than the regular cave, I was going to mention that some encounters were nerfed, such as the blue mimics. Yeah, of course, Mini Lily hits a full party of blue mimics. Well, it was 3 blue mimics, but it wasn't a single red mimic. That's what I'm trying to get at. So, yeah. We'll say, oh no, maybe she has to go through another one. I really hope. I saw the stairs there, so she doesn't, but yeah. I really hope for her to get a chance to at least get all the way down. Oh, there was Mike's Decker Blade. Talking about that earlier. So he actually did have a good reason to skip that puzzle, it seems. At least, you know, in hindsight.
Yep, you never know. The thing about the Ancient Cave or any roguelike is that when you have things that can be given to you for free at the cost of time, the question is, do you take advantage of the free gift and reduce your need to open up chests later, or do you take the gamble that something good's going to come your way and forego the gift in lieu of just trying to hopefully save a little bit of time? And he lucked out here. I'd say in the time it took him to open and find that Decker Blade, he probably would have been stuck on that Klotsky puzzle for a bit longer than other people might have been.
Longer than Pancras, you mean?
Probably a bit longer than Pancras. I've raced Mike doing the Ancient Caves puzzle here, and he got to the puzzle before me. Sorry, he started his puzzle before me, but I was a little grouchy about that, and I finished it before he did, so.
Yeah.
These Kraken sprites are new to this game. It is another enemy sprite that is unique, and you might not even see it or notice it in the main game due to the fact that it isn't an enemy sprite that you normally run into while exploring a dungeon or a cavern.
But it is in the game. I didn't have to do too much to make it work. It just never used except for one cutscene.
Right at the end of the game, too.
Spoilers.
Oh, no, I'm not saying what's happening. I'm saying it's there.
Yeah.
Another core for Lily. We see Lily really catching up now. She's an hour into her run, and of course she does have the extended amount of floors to dive through, but she's pacing fairly well into the 30s, and getting some safety EXP here just allows her to go faster. So the more cores that she gets, the more likely she can catch up. Maxim being dead on the floor is unfortunate, but he does have the ability to catch up later. Oh.
Goose attempt the world's most difficult trick. We'll see for how long. But yeah, maybe he does have the intention to clear it. We did already see him picking up the Decablade earlier, so he does have that to his name already.
The other tools that come out are just very, very useful, even if he doesn't take advantage of the Decablade. I mean, it's free capsule monster food at the very least, which is a pretty good food as far as red chest goods go. But the other things, the Curse Lifter, can be valuable for another point to uncurse the same item. That right there in itself could be, or the Samu Jewel. Mini Lily and Voodoo's could give up a couple of points and then simultaneously earn them back by completing the objectives that are provided out of this.
Yep, but of course it's also worth saying that there are points for skipping these rewards. So, yep.
That Curse Lifter I just saw on Mini Lily's screen. I just saw her grab a Curse Lifter. Which is pretty good, because if Voodoo gets one and she has one, then they may be able to tandem up a Curse and Uncurse point, which is pretty exciting. Solar Cell asks, what is a Rodley Rod? That's a good question. What is a Rodley Rod? Why would anyone ever come up with the name Rodley Rod?
So there's this thing where if you switch between characters with L and R in the US version, in the equip menu, it does kind of overlay those weapon names, right? So when you have a short weapon such as knife and you have a Decablade, you get a knife blade, you know, because the first 5 characters get overlaid. So if you do that with a rod and a deadly rod, you do get a Rodley Rod. So that's kind of where that comes from. And yeah, that's been an old bingo meme. Finally to be turned into an actual Rodley Rod. Yep. So it does replace the Deadly Rod. So none of these players here will actually find the Deadly Rod in this game because, you know, stole it. They will have to do without.
We've just crossed the 1 hour threshold of our run, and we can see our runners haven't. So we have 2 of our runners that are comfortably at the 50+ range. Mike is, in particular, who's the forerunner here, and Voodoo, who is taking advantage of the floor 50 puzzle. It is not the halfway point of the cave, do recall. Mini Lily has a little bit more catching up to do, but our races are all pacing fairly well. Ideally, the later floors don't feature too much in terms of time spent towards opening chests and trying to explore to find them to even open to begin with. They're just spent dealing with the bigger, more obstructive enemies that just block ways that you need to figure out how to deal with quickly. So you can see the times ramping up in speed. The opportunity for safety equipment and safety opening, safety EXP is just kind of past by the time you hit the 70s. And usually by then, unless you're farming IP, you're trying to avoid most combat entirely, the exception of a little bit to help your capsule monster level up and learn a particular skill, or maybe get a little bit of backup IP from a different option. Somebody get Voots a guide. Yep. Poor guy.
He definitely is struggling with this, and it is worth saying that. I was saying this before in chat. If you do attempt this puzzle without preparing for it, it has taken people literal hours to solve it blind. It's called the Cloud Ski puzzle. If you want to look it up, it's not a custom puzzle for Lufia, but something that the developers took from an old sliding puzzle that you can put on your desk for children or whatever if you really don't like set children. Yeah, it's a hard puzzle. You do have to prepare for it, but if you do prepare for it, you can solve it in around 1.5 minutes or something like that. So, yep. That's in there. It is an optional puzzle, I should say, obviously, right? So players can skip it. You can just go for the stairs, as Mike did.
Yeah, there are guides online if you need to Google something. Nobody wants to see that, of course, but I mean, if you have to do it, you have to do it. The Cloud
It's not
puzzle,
disallowed either.
No. Yeah, the music that you get from finding this in the normal game too is also not quite as entertaining as this one is. So we can thank Real Critical for not only adding this puzzle, giving our players the option of an additional challenge, but also giving us a little bit better music to listen to while doing it.
Yeah, in addition, I don't think it's on stream right now, but that track is one that you only hear for a couple of seconds in the game unless you sit on a message window forever. And it's actually a really, really cool track to hear. So I figured I'd give it some exposure, this puzzle.
I think I timed myself doing this. I spent a lot of time memorizing not only one of the faster ways to complete this, but also trying to practice the inputs. I practiced it blindfolded a little bit just to really see if I could become comfortable with it. And I think the fastest I was able to complete it was like 2 minutes and 14 seconds, just because there's a little bit of time delay between your input to flip to a different piece and then the time it takes to actually move it and then be able to select the next piece to move it. So you may be able to speed through one of these things just with super dexterous fingers if you happen to have such a thing available to yourself. But if you don't and you're just doing it through this base game, it's just the additional time it takes for inputting just adds a little bit to it.
So you're telling me you cleared this puzzle blindfolded in 2 minutes 14?
It was either 2:14 or 2:40, I think it was.
Damn. I mean, either of those would be very impressive.
It was just spending time memorizing the inputs. I built a Google sheet to track what the inputs were, and then I practiced them a lot.
Of course you did.
Of course I did.
Yep. There's way too many tryharders in this community, man, I'm telling you.
I just didn't want Mike to beat me. He revved up the idea in our race that we had a few months back that he was all practiced up and ready to go. So I said, okay, sure, I'll practice this sucker too. And then I find out that he was practicing down to the minute in which our race was to be held. And unfortunately for him, I still crushed him. But yeah, it looks like Voodoo's is just moments away from completing the puzzle, which is excellent for him. He's got... Oh,
he's on the right track.
Yeah, he's close. He's darn close.
Yep, he's good. This is exactly what you want.
So you could say, in theory, the time in which he's taking to complete this puzzle could be worth it, could not be worth it, because it does give 4 items which are fantastic for the Jelly Kill, but are not otherwise that great at getting you there. Curse Lifter for Mike, interesting. It will go nicely with the Curse Lifter that Mrs. Mike has yet to find. But the Samu Jewel is not a unique item to the Ancient Cave. It's just one that's very difficult to obtain. And
it might as well be unique, yeah.
Yes, a very rare drop. The Curse Lifter will be useful for a variety of reasons. The Zerko Shield is otherwise not in the Ancient Cave at all. And it comes with an IP ability that is actually on another shield, which is available in the Ancient Cave, but only Decker can use it. And Decker with a Decker Blade cannot use it. So he would probably choose not to use it. So it's interesting to see the tool of a Zerko Shield available to the player when it otherwise normally isn't.
Yep, and just for the sake of making me not appear like an evil overlord, I did put that Curse Lifter in there to kind of account for the fact that there is no Deadly Rod in this ROM pack, right? So if you do have to equip a Deadly Sword, you can get kind of a free Curse Lifter to remedy the situation.
Or a Fatal Pick, which is better but also worse, depending on your situation. Mike is in the 70s right now, the mid-70s. It's getting to the point now where he's not going to have much more that he'll be able to get through enemy options. He can always fight a Gorgon here for a Gorgon Rock. He finds a Deadly Armor, which is something worth holding on to for the uncursing factor. It looks like he's largely trying to avoid combat, probably because he got so much good luck with finding all those no cores and green cores earlier in the late 50s and early 60s. Again, normally by the time you're reaching the jelly, you are around level 30, give or take 1 or 2. And if you have to fight a few additional enemies along the way, they just pad out your EXP a bit more. Finding the ability to squeeze out some IP also helps by just having more HP to survive things like Cinder Blast from Archfiends, or maybe a Thunder plus Gloomy from Cinder Blast from Coppers, and then the Gloomy Thunder combo for a single Archfiend. Him being nearly level 40 right now, this is, I don't want to say unheard of in terms of speedrunning, but that's kind of why we put the 2-hour time limit in the Ancient Cave marathon runs that we tend to put focus on. By this much time, you arguably have the ability to just farm up some extra safety EXP and levels, and then be able to deal with encounters like a Leech Archfiend, which are normally incredibly threatening. Kind of like what we're looking at right now.
Yep. Is this your recommendation for farming experience?
No, but this was forced for him, unfortunately. The stairs are in the same room, so he's got to be able to take them out one way or the other. He doesn't have many.
So.
He has a fatal pick, and he does have an RD that is faster due to that twist jewel and his obscene amount of levels. Being able to outspeed the Archfiend is great. However, he cannot outspeed the Leech, and the Leech can apply confusion.
Yep.
Give me one.
That is a very dreaded combo. So let's hope he's going to get through that. But I will also say that he does have a very good time management here. As you said, there is a lot of time he has left over to, kind of negotiate floors if he has to. The other 3 runners, I would say, are falling a little bit behind, perhaps. Which, is due to this and that situation. You cannot always run, but they will definitely have to pick it up if they want to see the jelly floor until the end of this run. Vinny Lily, of course, gets a free pass because she took a death at 1 hour 30 minutes in. So, yeah, actually, she is at the 45 minutes mark, aka 45 minutes left to go. She would have to be at floor 60 to be at the halfway point. For everyone else, they would have to be at the halfway point in an hour. And of course, that doesn't have to mean anything. You can always speed up later on in the cave. Just to give you guys some pointers on the times. And Mike clears out that encounter. Very nice. Without any problems as far as I could see. Yeah, so he's at floor 80. Mrs. Mike is very close behind the floor 56. And I think Luf's is... Oh yeah, now also at floor 56. It is a considerable difference in floor numbers, I would say. But yeah, definitely nothing that the other 3 cannot make up for, Just running like madmen. And of course, keep in mind that runners do not have to reach the final floor. So this is a tournament done by points totals. So you will see in the center of the screen, we have 10 points for Mike and Mrs. Mike, and 8 points for Ludus and Lily. So these points are not necessarily up to date because, this tournament, sometimes people forget this or that, to mark this or that, or will prioritize other things. They do have to play at the same time after all. So there's a couple of points that may still be under the belt of a certain team and aren't marked yet, but in general it does give you an idea of what they already have, what they still have to do, and I will post a score command chat really quick so you can get an idea of that. Also, there is a little bit of feeding going on. Probably the last time we see Disco Wolf. Gave him shoutouts before. So yeah, players, if they do want to keep that point, that team point, they do have to feed their capsules in tandem. So if one player wants a capsule at form 3, then their other player needs to have the capsule at form 3 as well. That's why you see this parallel feeding here. In the meantime, Mike already seems to be at IP farming. Or possibly, since that is an objective of this ROM hack, so finally you're gonna see some objective hunting again, is killing a Copper Dragon without the use of instant death. So, yep, that very much appears to be what's going on here. One half has been taken care of, and now he's come back for the second one without the instant death. This time with a bit more dedication to actually killing the enemy. Rudus finishes his feeding. There will be Sully 3. I do see big damage numbers for Mike, so the Copper Dragon should be history in just a moment. Yep, I already see the point marked, so I'm assuming that Copper Dragon will die momentarily. Or he's just, you know, very much trusting in his abilities. Yep, there he goes. Very nice. That means that Mike has cleared. Let's see. Yeah, they do still have to uncurse the same item. Well, if they want to have that point. But other than that, and except for the final floor, they have gotten each and every point. I do believe the deadly item point. So there is an incentive that only one player from each team can equip one deadly item. That is not marked, which makes me believe that they simply chose to both equip deadly items. Oh, there is a Gades place for Lufia. Very nice. Let's see. He does not immediately feed that one, so yeah. Let's see whether he intends to keep it. You know, every other blue chest item has been immediately fed. Plus, Gades Blade has a very low attack power, so it's unnecessary to feed it. You know, most of the time. Mrs. Mike dies to something I saw for a brief second. I think she struggled with Sorfakos, but I don't think that's what killed her. In any case, Miss Mike unfortunately takes the death here. At which point, you know, we said earlier, 1 hour 30 is doable. I think at 43 minutes, it's pretty clear to say that she's not gonna reach the jelly anymore, but nevertheless, she could still, you know, contribute to the team by filling the increasing the same item objective, for example. So 43 minutes is a lot of time for that. But yeah, it's very unfortunate for a player to die this late in the run. And for, you know, the majority of points that can be gotten on this board, it does kind of sort of put the pressure on Mike to deliver in that regard. I also think we lost Eli, so excuse me if I do have to take the one or other sip of water break. Right, yeah, clearing or going to floor 50 and zooming past that puzzle is yet another objective that can still be gotten. That's perfectly correct. As noted by chat. But in general, if you do have any, you know, corrections for stuff I'm saying, or if you do have any questions with the game that I can help with, then yeah, feel free to post it in chat. We'll happily answer any and all questions to the game in general or this tournament. But at the very least, I do hope you are aware of the scores. Still posted there in chat quite recently. If you look at that, you will be able to follow the players a bit more closely and see what they're trying to get at, especially now that Mike is nearing the jelly floor. And now we see on the screen, guys, Christmas Sprite. Very nice. Yep, she also does choose not to go for the puzzle. Lexus can actually use spells, and he is not just a spellcaster, but the strongest spellcaster in the game. Has the highest intelligence out of any of the characters. Unfortunately, that doesn't make him, strong in other areas, but just for that, he's a very good character. And in ACAC, which is a category where you have to take every single character to the jelly across, 2 or more runs. Very nice to have him in your party, but you have other options, then Lexus is usually not the first choice. I will say usually, because there have been players recently that thought otherwise. The thunder and water, I'm happily going to explain that as well. Don't be sorry for any kind of questions, because we're here to explain that. Each player, or each team, well, I should say each team's player chooses 2 of the 4 main elements, and they do get a point for that. If they do want to keep that point, they will have to stick only to those 2 elements as far as spells that are being cast are concerned. So, for example, you mentioned Thunder and Water, which is true for Mike and Voodoos. Those 2 players could use Thunder and Water spells with absolutely no repercussions. If they felt they needed to use a Fire Ice spell, they could do that as well, so it's not like a hard restriction. But they will lose a point, and as you can see, the point total is reasonably close here, so that's probably not something they want to use. Will they have revives? I'm actually not sure. But she does have a Deca Blade now. That's very good. Assuming she does intend to still go to the jelly, she has made, for taking the depth not too far in, she has actually made a really good progress here. I don't know, I'm gonna say it's not impossible. She would have to get some really good floors. Oh, something that's been keeping a lot of players, or has taken players a lot of time so far in this tournament, is the 6 chests in the treasure room goal. And now actually in this round, every single player has already got that goal. So, yep. That's good news. So players actually do not have a lot of reason to stick around floors, other than the situations they're being presented with. Yeah, 39 minutes to clear 45 floors. It's actually a bit more than that, because this guy's struggling, as I'm reasonably sure you're aware, because the Kappa. So we're looking at 120 floors. This is actually quite a way to go still. Yep, Mike being at floor 86 is the player the furthest in right now. And everything until floor 98 is going to look as usual, and then we're just going to go to floor 99, and then floor 100, and so on and so forth. So, remind you to curse me for putting the puzzle in. I don't know, I said so last week during my commentary. This hack has been originally designed for a marathon run, for Travictox, who you saw run the last round, and actually win this tournament. A very experienced cave runner, and we're both attending a live event. I was making a drum hack. He had no idea what he was in for. And had I known that this ROM hack was being passed around the community as much as it is, then I probably wouldn't have made that puzzle a thing. But I will also say players did like running it. So while
I sure enjoyed watching it be ran.
There you go. Yeah, you're welcome, Trav. It was a bit of a fan favorite as well, I will say. I think that was a pretty cool run to watch. A lot of people enjoyed that.
The surprise Klotsky puzzle to a run that nobody was expecting, and then him completing it was pretty exciting to see.
Yeah. And the side quest from the kid, you know?
Yeah, maybe somebody will show us the side quest. Thank you.
I think so too.
Looks like we had a little bit of a change since I left. I had a phone call come up. I had to jump off of that. Sorry. I see Mrs. Mike took an unfortunate nap. I see.
Yep.
Mike, Voods, and Lily are all still going strong, however.
Yep, very much so. Lily has almost caught up with Voodoo's here, I want to say. He's making really good progress. Of course, it's always a different thing, you know, when you get into a tournament like this and you're being told you have 2 hours, then you run different than when you die 1 hour 30 minutes in, you know, then you're in kind of speed mode. And I know because I've died plenty at the 1 hour 30 mark in these kind of tournaments.
We've seen people like Traffic Talks die near the 1 hour mark and then come right back around and flip us with an incredible follow-up, sometimes reaching the jelly in record times. Just to prove a point, I think.
Yep. And I am not sure if you were here for that, but Voodoo's actually did clear the puzzle. I think you were, yeah, sure. You explained.
Yeah, I did see him grab the goodies out.
Might be. Yep, so if you look at the scorecard, Eli, you'll see that there is not a lot of objectives left for Mike to go for here. Do you happen to know whether Mike and Miss Mike both equipped to Deadly?
I don't recall seeing Mrs. having equipped to Deadly at all. Unless she did right before she died, and then I stepped away and missed it.
Okay, so that is probably an additional point that they still have.
We'll have to confirm that a little bit later on.
Yep. And I did say earlier that Mrs. Mike could still get a point from skipping the floor 50 puzzle, but she did already skip that, so that point is locked in. Voodoo's, however, did not skip the rewards. Everyone else already did. So, yep.
If you don't skip the puzzle, it implies that you're probably making a mad dash towards the end. Although the Samu Jewel Curse Lifter double up, yeah, that's theoretically 2 points you get for skipping out on 1 point, or throwing 1 point away. So it is a net gain depending on how the runs go. If 2 runners happen to not arrive to the jelly and maybe are pacing poorly due to unfortunate luck or otherwise, taking the puzzle and then doing the points for the equip gem on maximum combo and also the uncurse the same thing. I mean that's a reasonable amount of points you can stumble into. Scary situation for Voodoo's there with the gold Gorums.
Yeah, there's been a couple of, not so friendly encounters, but overall, except for whatever encounter it may have been that Mrs. Mike saw before finding herself on floor 0 again, I don't think there's been too many rough encounters, if I remember correctly. Mike has been in one earlier, I remember that, but nothing he couldn't handle. Lots of experience,
Yep, all that extra experience, it goes to show just how important 5 or 6 levels are on the game. Yeah, you can level up to 99, sure, whatever. You can kill everything in here and probably get in a 100% run to be a level within the mid 70s to mid 80s by just, like I said, killing everything. And sure, yeah, there are still things that can absolutely tear your run apart. An unfortunate attack from gold dragons could really end things quicker than you would want them to be ended. But having just 5 or 6 extra levels gives you a lot more certainty to say just barely surviving one attack versus not surviving one attack at all. And then because of the way damage calculations work, the more characters that are alive when magical AoE attacks occur, the less damage that you take due to how everything spreads. So if you have to fight Archfiends and you only have 1 character alive, say Decker take a full thunder to the face, it's going to hurt him for a lot of damage compared to if you have 3 or 4 people alive to absorb, say, 2 thunders. And Salon, who often dies to just 1 attack like that, if she happens to survive the first spell and then can take a second spell, you know, that's damage mitigation for the entire rest of the party simply because she's a few levels stronger.
So the question has been brought up by chat before and now again, whether Lily might not have any revive items, and that could be true. I'm assuming that, yeah, there is a reason for that. AKA someone seeing that there's a couple of dead people in the party, maybe. Yeah, I'll have to look out for that. I planned so before.
But there are a few options that she
know.
has outside of miracles to revive people. Decker has a few armors that can revive either a single or a group, but he'll need IP to use it, and also a safe battle to engage in to use it in. So she may not have had the opportunity to prepare for that. Oh, interesting room for Voodoo.
Oh, nice. Single node room for Voodoos, yeah. That's a rare sight. Let's hope it's not a soft lock floor.
Yep.
Wouldn't be the first time on one of these either.
I almost hope it is, just so that way we can finally have one in the tournament. Especially because he brought one up last week. Someone said, hey, does Voodoo get a free point for winning if he finds a soft lock? And in the past, I have had a random bonus incentive for it.
Yeah. Whoever asked that is going to find out that he does not instantly win the tournament. If that is a single node room, if that is a soft lock floor. But we did actually have one before that happened to Decker BRD.
Yep.
Wasn't it also in a Jelly Jam, if I'm not mistaken?
I think it was in a Jelly Jam versus he finds the stairs.
Yep.
Darn.
That's good.
Yeah, it was in a Jelly Jam. He got stuck with Gorgons and Genies, I remember, on a soft lock floor. I think it was floor 85. No, it's 84. It was 82 through 84, one of those floors. To have a soft lock in a tournament.
Yeah. It was very unfortunate. It wasn't like, floor 1 soft lock reset, whatever. Yeah. So Mike, currently on floor 99. He just entered that floor.
Yep. Normally you don't see floor 99 ever. So
yep.
This is where Guys Struggle really does begin to display its unique features.
Yep. Floor 99 and 100 are actually still vanilla though, so if you could access them, they would look exactly like this as far as enemies and chests are concerned. Floor 100 floor 100 and onward, actually not. So everything you see from now on, including this side quest kid on the bottom there, maybe it gets shown off. Oh yeah, it definitely will get shown off. There you go. So finally you see what's behind that kid.
The kid was not a kid all along.
Yep. It's just a mimic.
It's an unusual mimic. It's actually a custom mimic.
Yep.
We saw it be relatively harmless this time by casting Mirror on itself, but now that we've seen them, do you want to enlighten us on what they can do?
Oh, yeah, if I can remember, so that's actually the only entirely custom enemy. Everything else, we piece together sprites and unused enemies and this and that. That one is a completely custom one we call the Hades Mimic, and it can do the Dark Force thing, I think it's called, from Demise. Which does have an instant kill chance, which of
really
course
quick and interesting situation for the Mikes. It appears as though Mrs. Mike may have intentionally equipped a fatal pick and then used strongest to equip other weapons, in which Maxim put on a deadly sword. So that would mean that the deadly point between the two of them is now lost.
They didn't have it marked anyway, so
they didn't have it marked
I had
earlier.
a suspicion earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a suspicion that happened before as well, but yep.
Oof, scary room for Voodoos here.
Yeah. As mentioned, chat, when you first play this, you obviously think, oh, it's a kid. And, I had this floor 50 puzzle added. So why wouldn't you think there's another NPC in the cave?
Nope, the entire time he was a mimic all along.
Yep.
Oh, Voodoo takes a dive. A Ice Frog. Typically a semi-threatening, but not super threatening enemy. Ice or uses a Cruel Storm and just barely kills 2 of his characters back to back.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big hit for Team Lily and Voodoo, who are already a little bit behind before. Looks like if there's any chance at a jelly kill, it's going to be coming from Mike, who their team currently is in the lead, but points are not out of the running yet. Lily is still making good progress.
Ice Rogues, usually an enemy that we're happy to see, but not because they're weak, but because it means that there's no Archfiend in their place. So, yeah, it is a force to be reckoned with.
The lesser of the evils, you could say.
Exactly. And Lily their Cruel Storm is cruel.
Lily catches the death and flips back to Darby Form 1 because she is now restricted from using Darby Form 1. If Voodoo was still around with a Form 3 Sully, then she could keep her Form 3 Darby, but that means that Lily is now suffering a little bit because she's lost one of her instant kill tools. Unless Voodoo manages to find a lot of magic fruits in a very short amount of time.
And since we're getting closer to Jelly, I guess we can explain a little bit about the Jelly kill setup, which ties into a question asked in chat and already answered, but I'm still going to go into it. For the Jelly, if you do intend to kill it, you kind of need a formula of fractionals, aka taking a certain fraction of the enemy's health, and finishers, which deal overall damage, and Deca Blade just so happens to be the strongest finisher, fractional, sorry. So that's why it's so sought after.
So one thing that's also being stated in chat, it halves the HP of the final boss. It cuts the enemy's HP in half. It doesn't always do that. Number one, it does have a neutral elemental property, so enemies that resist non-elemental attacks actually do take reduced damage from it, such as Archfiends, unfortunately. It would be a great tool to taking them down if it actually did have their HP. But
that's fair.
Another thing about it is, depending on what row you are in when you use a fractional ability, you have a plus or minus 12.5% damage. It's a 1/8 increase or decrease for being in the front row or the back row. So when you're in the front row and you use it, the actual minimum damage it can do is half of the HP of the target, and it can deal up to, I want to say 1/8 more of damage between the RNG roll and also row variants, both taking into effect into the calculation. So you'll see occasionally fatal blows dealing around 6,000 damage, and to a jelly that has 9,980, 6,000 seems awful high. And again, that's just because of the way damage math works. There's a little bit of an RNG factor applied, and then there's the row modifier tossed in there. So again, it adds to emphasize that the Decker Blade not only halves an enemy's HP, but it more than halves the jelly's HP from wherever it's at upon the time it's used.
Yep. Yeah, chat's correct. For all intents and purposes, basically we just used on Jelly. What Eli is saying is that if it didn't have certain properties, it would probably be used on more enemies. And honestly, if you do have a goal like killing a copper without the use of instant death, why not use the Deca Blade? You can always MP farm afterwards. So that is an option players have, and that of course is specific to the tournament. But yeah, in regular speedruns, you probably don't equip the Deca Blade until the Jelly because its attack power is too weak.
Not to say it's far too weak. It's just it's a mid-game weapon, and you're gonna want the end-game weapons or the elementally effective weapons, and Decker Blade just is a non-elemental weapon with middling attack power. Of course, it's better than the short swords and other things that you get your hands on, so it's not bad to see. It just isn't as it isn't as good for the run as you may think. So for you say you find the elusive floor 15 Decker Blade, congratulations, you just found it, the most important jelly killing weapon. Immediately you found it. It's decent on Decker, but if he's got some other blue chest weapon, a mega axe or whatever, you're not using the Decker Blade for the entirety of the run. Aside from that one rare situation of maybe using it on a silver dragon that you have to beat down without a deadly.
Yep, it will be equipped, but it will also be very quickly over-equipped again.
Just like that trick spell, which is, again, great to find. It's nice to have, but in the context of the run itself to the final floor, it's very, very unlikely to prove useful. Mike finds an interesting situation here. He cannot obtain the contents of a chest that he just opened. this is not something you often see in speedruns of the Ancient Cave unless you're doing maybe a 100% speedrun. That's because you have a maximum amount of items that you can hold. And the variety of items dictates that. So sometimes you may be unable to unequip items, and that's because it would be adding an item to your pool of just non-used gear. And you can't do that because if you're out of space in your backpack, you're out of space. So he needs to feed his capsule monster a little bit, or he could just drop things, but it looks like he's feeding up maybe to Form 2, just so that way in case Mrs. Mike gets a Form 2 Darby for the remainder of the run, then Mike can take advantage of Form 2 Sully just for a little bit of the run, maybe at the Jelly, if not anywhere else.
Yep. So he's feeding up to 2, but he's going to have to either step it down again or wait for Miss Mike to feed it.
Speaking of stepping down, I think Lily's big triumphant comeback is about to finally step down here.
Oh yeah, I see it. That's too bad. That means that other than Mike, every single runner here has taken a dive. But yeah, Mike is still going strong. He has 20 minutes for 10 floors. As long as he does reach the jelly floor in the time allotted, then he does get as much time as he wants to do, a couple of things and a jelly fight. So, yep. Lower 120 is his goal for the next 19 minutes and 50 seconds.
He does have a reasonable shot. The final floors here are not going to add too much to the mix. He's not going to be hammered at with things he may not know how to deal with. So I feel like he'll make it. It's just a matter of how much time he spends along the way, because he still does have a few things to take care of. Going off the rare, never used King Hydora sprite. Something you just normally don't see in the main game at all.
Yep, everyone else is not out of the tournament yet. They can still earn points for their respective teams. And we are looking at 11-9. So should Mike get to floor 120, then yeah, it's pretty safe to say that he's gonna get more points than Team Wolves and Lily can earn in a reasonable amount of time. However, if for some reason he fails to do that, it might still be very much in the interest of the orange team to get 1 or 2 points. We'll see, of course. I wish the best to Mike, but I also wish the best to Wolves and Lily. So, Mike with a last-second real blade. His setup, I know that he at least has a Decker Blade, an Old Sword, 2 real blades now, I believe.
I believe he picked up a Hydora Rock.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's got the Zerko Shield for some interesting attack power increase. Lizard Blow is, he has a bunch of...
No. He skipped the floor 50 puzzle. He does not have the Zerko Shield. Yep. That was Voodoo.
That's right.
You got that.
The Real Blade, Blizzard Blow, Hydora Rock. He did find a Decker Blade, if I recall, you saying.
He did, yeah.
So, him not having... I don't think he found an Old Sword or a...
he does have an Old Sword as well.
Oh, he does?
He picked it up just a couple of minutes ago, yeah.
I must have missed it while doing some stuff. The Decker Blade Old Sword is a very powerful combination on Decker's... Or on Mike's front row characters right now. And the back row characters have access to a few finishing options. They're not the strongest characters with which to use their finishing options, but they need to do something, so those are going to be definitely turn 2, turn 3 options.
Yeah. And while chat doesn't seem to be a very big fan of the Real Blade, at least in part, I will say that he does need a couple of strong finishes here, in particular due to the jelly healing on the 3rd turn, as we saw in the last round. So... effectively it's around 11,000 damage that you have to deal here, and your fractionals will only take away from the 10,000 HP portion. because you want to use that in the first turn still. So yeah, you do need a couple of good options here, and the 2 Rio Blades might just be what he wants. Of course, the Hedorok is also good. We'll see.
Let's see a little bit of chat asking if anyone's taken Tia in the tournament. Because the Guys Struggle patch forbids the ability to take Guy entirely, he's just not available to even select. The choices are thus Salon, nice lizard blow for Mike again, Salon, Lexus, or Tia. The girls offer utility in terms of being able to use the Fatal Pick. Tia tends to be a little faster, or Salon tends to just have a greater variety of options to equip along the way, and also just a bit more damage potential if she's not using maybe an entirely supportive role in terms of, say, casting Trick and using maybe a Gorgon Rock at the end. Because the Deadly Rod with Devastation ×3 doesn't exist, then Tia and Salon are not quite as comparable at the Jelly as they would be in base game. So the only runs that you typically see people taking Tia in are either the Kill Counter patch, which encourages killing stuff quickly with the Deadly Rod, or some Guy Struggle patch situations in which you're thinking about Tia as your force since Guy's unavailable. Arguably in Guy Struggle, Salon is better, I'd say more debatably than base, again because of the Deadly Rod comparison. Real Blade gives Lexus a bit more punch, and at the end, that's probably fine. In the Kill Counter mod, again, because you have a comparable setup between the two, between the two girls, you're incentivized to probably take Tia in there. But in the vanilla patching, you're required to take Salon if you want a point. So there's one mode that simply penalizes you for not taking Salon. There's another mode where you're sort of incentivized to take Salon, and there's a third mode where Tia arguably is the crutch character. But none of our racers in the 4 races that we've had have selected the Kill Counter race, and that is because the challenge requires having your team sort of glued together in terms of how you progress through the cave, and nobody's really wanted to take on that challenge, understandably so.
Yep. And Mike with those words enters floor 120. If you've only seen the US version of this game, you will be surprised how this floor looks, because this is actually the fixed version of the Jelly floor. You are happy enough to have played the original European or Japanese releases. This is nothing special.
We're seeing this seeing set up. Mike's possibly he's going to wait for a little bit to see if there's Form 2 availability for him to use Sully at the Jelly. He may be saying, okay, Mrs. Mike, go and get a little bit more food before I flip. I want to take Form 2 in. And he has the time to wait, arguably. He earns a point for reaching the final floor. He wants to do a few interesting things in the Jelly battle, some of which include not using a same spell or IP ability multiple times, and also trying to squeeze a defend action in. Arguably, what took out Pankraz was the need of just about 100 or 150 damage, which nearly any action could have fixed. But because he defended, he got that point instead. He's got to figure out how he wants to balance things around now, because also once he finishes the Jelly battle, he is done. So he cannot shuffle his equipment around any longer. He cannot uncurse things afterwards and have it be a point that's earned in tandem with Mrs. Mike. So he's incentivized to wait here for just a little bit, think around with his setup, figure out what he wants to do to balance his equipment, and then go in when Mrs. Mike is probably finished up doing everything that she's doing.
I think due to this very specific Jelly, it might be a really helpful thing to have a Form 3 capsule. Unfortunately, I don't think the 12.5 minutes are enough for Mrs. Mike to acquire enough items to make such a feat feasible.
One blue chest item could be about 1/4 of the hunger meter for a capsule monster, and a magic fruit as well would be that same much. So it is possible for in the next 12 minutes for her to find a blue chest or a magic fruit, which should really speed things up. But Form 3 is going to be a bit of a stretch in these early floors.
Yeah, so the thing is, Form 2 is better, of course, than Form 1, right? But it doesn't add all that much. I know Travis probably gonna correct me on that as far as pure numbers go, but what I mean is that it's probably not gonna make up for the difference that you need for the difference between a regular jelly and this ROM hex jelly. Because the extra 1000 HP that are not accounted for by fractionals, you do need some heavy damage for that, and Solly 3 is what I think would be the lowest where I'd be looking for that kind of damage. Or, of course, any flavor of Darby 4 or something like that. Sully asking for the real blade. Sully knows what's good.
Well, it looks like she has one, which is interesting.
That's Mike feeding, so...
Or looks like Mike has one, yeah. That would really help speed things along for...
He has 2 in total, I think. Oh no, he also has the Hidora Rock, so he doesn't have to use both. Yep.
That's a lot of craving, building a single feeding. So there's a bit of a debate in terms of what the community thinks is the best capsule monster. In terms of the speedruns, Sully is the best because he does not really take time away from your other characters to do and perform actions that matter. And he's a fairly reliable damage sponge. He doesn't run away. He has a lot of HP, so he can take hits from spells. The longer he's alive, the more mitigation you have from enemies not being able to focus target when they're casting their AoE spells. And the Sully 2 instant kill every now and then can help, and Sully 4's damage, if he does use it, is second to none, really. That said, he's not very reliable at using those things, so he's debatably not as good because, say, a character like Darby, Form 3, who has a 20% chance to just kill something, or very consistent, reliable usage of AoE high damage attacks in his Form 4 potential, or even Form 1 just confusing a group of genies copper dragons can really help get you out of a jam as far as late cave. And there's very little utility that matters in late cave. Damage numbers typically don't matter in late cave. It's just Darby all around is a very good capsule monster. Mike shows off Sully 4's greatest head just because he can.
Yep. He's just like, I got time,
Well, he had 3 magic fruits, and that, it goes to show how quickly he was able to get from 3 to 4 just by having the right things.
Yep. As for standings, you are looking at the match for third. There has been a match previously that has determined the winners of this tournament, which are Trevitox and Colliers versus Pancras and Passamorphous, who got second place. We're currently looking at the solution, only a couple of minutes left. The match for third. Right, the Samurai quit, yeah, so...
But the thing about what El Chico says, do you really need a capsule with that output? Arguably, it always helps to have output, because your finishers are never quite as good as you hope they're going to be. He's ready for the setup, but again, because of that restored 1000 HP, this jelly is a bit tougher to take on. Now, he's got 10 plus levels compared to what a normal run would have. He has a Decker Blade and Old Sword, which are fantastic percentile damaging options, and then he's got finishers in Salon, who's respectable in terms of her output, and Artie, who's also not bad if he has a good weapon to utilize, which he's got the Lizard Blow available to himself. So it's just a matter of seeing how things kind of work out. He doesn't have a strong ability to buff his team's damage, so having the higher base level would be nice. It's just a matter of seeing what he decides to do. If he takes a gamble to see if Sully 4 will help and he throws away the team point to just try to get the jelly kill with some swag, or if he's got enough damage options in mind to think, okay, my turn order will not have me violate a point if I don't use a this or I don't use a that. I don't double input at this. Like he's using 2 Lizard Blows. He can't use both of their IPs or else he violates a point and loses some credit, which he doesn't want to do.
And what we always got to keep in mind is, remember what happened to Pancras, last round. He had a really good set of equipment, like really everything you could ask for, and still didn't get the kill in this ROM hack. So, yep, here we go. Mike's starting the fight.
Whip out those calculators if you haven't already done so.
And if I'm not mistaken, he does choose to go for Sully 4 in order to get a chance to get the kill.
Mike doing this for the people. I respect it.
I mean, he absolutely can do that, He loses a point in order to hopefully gain a point.
Was he
Can't use any spell twice and so on.
Yeah, it's a matter of he'll say have other characters do other... Oh, so he has Salon and Artie both cast Thunder, so that's also giving up a point that he could earn. But, again, he seems to be a man of the people. Big. Couple of big rolls. 6,558 damage. Is pretty darn good for turn 1. That old sword roll seemed high, but the fatal blow seemed a bit low. Unfortunately, Sully defending is not good.
Yep, although it's to be expected, Like 2 defense and the battle anger is average, I think, as far as damage is concerned, so there's 2 more chances.
Yep, and ideally what you see is Sully using his actions before you're done using your fraction, or sorry, after you're done using your fractionals. So if you're here with a Deadly Rod, Decker Blade for Voodoos.
Decker Blade for Voodoos, yeah.
If you're here with a Devastation out of a Deadly Rod, or maybe even 2, depending on your team composition, then you may want Sully to not attack first, because technically that lowers the damage output of your turn 2 Devastation. But you also want the attack, because damage is damage. You just would rather see something more, rather than a 0.
The order in which fractionals are being used does not matter, actually. So whether you use the Fail Blow first or the Battle Cry does turn out to be the same amount of damage.
This is where Mike's feeling a little bit of a struggle. He's not using Trick because he doesn't have it. Not having the attack power to boost his finishing moves is going to really hurt if Sully doesn't quite give him the backup. We're sitting at 8,532 damage right now, but we're about
pretty exactly the number we've seen for Pancras. And
this
there's
heal
to show
is
us what you got.
7,500. So let's see. We see 830. We still have to deal roughly 1,700 damage within the next couple of moves. Decker is only going to be able to attack, so we really, really want something big out of Sully.
Yep, he does need Sully. He doesn't need the battle anger, basically. That's not a battle anger. Yeah, so that's unfortunate.
That is rough
not
stuff.
A kill.
Not having Trick was, I think, the determining factor here. He didn't even use a defend for that point. He just went and did his best to get a kill.
I think they could have made a difference, but yeah, I can see why you would go for that, with the opposition being reasonably far out of the way of getting close in points, I will say. So once he did make it to the Jelly floor. Exactly, the Jelly, if you do not manage to kill him in 3 turns, or kill it in 3 turns, then the Jelly runs, so your challenge is to deplete its HP pool within those 3 turns. Actually, if you do outspeed it somehow.
Yeah, technically you could attack it on turn 4 if you manage to use a lot of actions on turns 1, 2, and 3 to speed up yourselves to outspeed it on turn 4, but
that cannot happen under normal circumstances.
No, you need a very, very specific setup, which none of our characters... I don't think anybody found a Spider Jewel in this entire event. And that's one of the more important items. So, Brazilian guy's asking how much HP the Jelly has. The Jelly in this run does have 9,980 HP, just like in Vanilla. However, on turn 3, it heals for 1,001 HP. That heal is what did both Pancras and Mike in for being able to secure their kill, because otherwise they dealt more than 10,000 points of damage. They're just not within the confines of the heal. It encourages a turn 2 kill if possible, but it requires, again, very, very specific items to get that combination of damage output actions out.
Yep.
A respectable run.
It is quite a hard Jelly. Yep. Definitely GG. to Mike, who has completed his run already. He is not allowed to go on now, or I will say that nothing he does will count towards the points. The other runners can technically still go on for about 2 minutes. And while that happens, I will dump the AC Discord link in chat again. So if you feel like any more nerding about this game and or asking questions, maybe starting to speedrun this yourself, feel free to join us. And yeah, we'll get a whole lot of information about this game. Quite a fun roguelike if you're in the business for one. And of course, a very, very good story mode that I can only recommend. Yeah, and of course, shoutouts to Eli as well already for hosting yet another Jelly Jam.
Yep, this is our 5th Jelly Jam event, and we've had a variety of people show up. The activity, I would say, has diminished a little bit. In the past, we've had events in which there were 4 days worth of activity. In this year, and also last year, we only had 2 days worth of activity, but that's fine. You know, we can condense it down, give people a nice short and sweet tournament. Not quite as much bloat, not quite as much repeat. Easier for people to schedule around for the players who are repeatedly performing, which you need to consider the fact that, yes, in this case, the 8 runners all showed up on each day, as well as Real Critical and myself, who ran and operated everything that we could, and then whoever showed up on commentary, which Magic Couple Altair was commentary last week and also this week. So everybody who was here pretty much was here for both entire weeks, and coordinating an event where 11, 12 people show up at the same time 2 weekends in a row. I mean, gosh, we're not grade school students in school. We are adults, so being able to coordinate is kind of tough. And again, the fact that we had as much turnout as we did was good. So I'm happy with everything, but that does declare this round an event. So that officially said, I'll drag everybody else in and have a little bit of closing statements before we end the show.
And a cancer rock.
And that's it, guys. Time is officially up. One last cancer rock for the road, huh?
Yeah.
GG, everyone.
GG.
So, with that said, Mike made it to the jelly. He did not quite get the kill, but he sure darn well tried. We had a good showing by everybody, and the jelly once again conquered us, but we were able to enjoy ourselves and get a good show out of what we did see. So thank you guys for participating and doing everything that you did to not only show up last week, but also this week. I mean, dude, it's a big deal to have everyone around. Any last statements from you guys as the runners before we wrap up the show?
Just thanks again,
Yeah,
Ellie,
such as where the scores
everyone
were
doing
actually
fine.
final, and before we get to switch back to that screen.
Oh yeah, we do have to confirm that scores are final, I suppose. I didn't see anything that stuck out as unusual or different, but we could say that at the very least, we do know that Traffic Talks and Colliers did pull the win for the grand champions of this event, Pancras and Possum Morpheus. Again, Possum Morpheus showing up and being a complete newbie. This is not only his first event, but he's only been playing the game for a couple of weeks. He came in and did well. Yeah. They made it to the finals, and Pancras again showing that you don't have to play the game too often as long as you just are studious and understand how the game works. You know, you can always just come back to it when you're ready. Maybe have a note sheet up if you need it, and just play the game with a friend. Turn it into something fun.
Yeah, so just to point that out, last week someone said that Postomorphous was playing for a week, which means that in the time between last week's Jelly Jam stream and today, you could have gotten to the same level with, the right amount of dedication and resources. So, just to throw it out there, it's definitely possible to learn this game in a very short time if you have access to the resources and a couple of people to help you out with. Definitely an unusual success story, though, I will say. But who knows? Maybe one of you will be the next prodigy.
I look forward to the challenge. I think on that note, I really don't think there are any points missing. Did Voodoo and Lily wear blue chest stuff?
No, we didn't wear it. Oh, I didn't. I don't know if Lily did.
You guys may have to mark that point then, because I don't see it marked on your trackers. Everybody skipped except for Voodoo. Nobody.
Suddenly
punched
we're
a
back
copper
to
dragon death.
12 to 11, you know, so maybe this is going to be close.
No, that's probably the only one we missed. Yeah, looks like it.
Mike broke their capsule point at the jelly. Did that break cut them down, or was that already marked? Let's see.
That's already taken
Right,
out.
unmarked. Okay.
We broke our deadly point
Yep,
too.
looks good to me as well.
Well, then I think that sets it. With a great score all across the board. I mean, we definitely saw a median at the event around the 10 to 15 point margin. For an event that has 25 points up for grabs, nobody crossing 20 proved that the challenge itself was, well, challenging. But I don't know, I think everyone did well. I think that getting to the jelly 3 times within 8 runs is respectable, considering how mean the jelly was today. And well, I guess we'll just wait until next year's Jelly Jam to see if we can spark another victory and give the people another good show. So thanks again for participating with Jelly Jam 2024. This will conclude the event for the year. Next January, if there is another Jelly Jam, will be the event, although do keep your eyes open in between for any future events that may come up, such as a summertime Fatal Blow event, or Fatal Blowout. If you do find yourself interested in participating in the Ancient Cave for events, for activities, just to do a run to say, hey, I did it, join our Ancient Cave Discord, which has been linked in chat several times, and we'll be happy to support you. Lastly, if you stream it, we will come, I promise you. I spend most of my time during the day while I'm at work or while I'm at home, if I'm not doing household responsibilities, looking for Lufia 2 Ancient Cave speedrunners, just so I can help offer a little bit of advice out there, give some tips where necessary, and to balance things and turn it into an experience that people remember fondly instead of being something that just turns into a headache and a struggle. So thank you again to the participants this year, all 8 of you runners, Real Critical for developing the tracker, which was linked and used heavily in this event, and commentary for jumping in, Mike, and Mrs., as well as Altair, who may not be here for this particular moment. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Go to the bathroom, get a snack, have a drink. You earned it.